Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap Show. I'm your host, David Nagy, and in the studio, one of my favorite people, your co-host, Tony Shore. How are you, Tony?
Me? You shouldn't
You.
have.
It's true.
Oh, David, great to be here with you. It's been a couple of weeks. You've had a lot going on. We haven't done a new show in a little bit here. You've been really busy. And
Yeah.
the summertime is busy anyway, but you've had a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
And, life happens. We've gotten busy, but there are so many things in financial news to talk about. There's so many important things that people need to know, especially now that we're in the last half of the year, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. The year's almost over already.
Yeah. Well, how have you been? Are you keeping busy, meeting with a lot of
Really,
people over there?
really busy. Every year I say it's our best year, and this year we're gonna surpass last year. So every year it gets better and better. We get to help more and more people. I'm just very blessed to do what we do.
All right. Well, yeah, and I think that's great. You are keeping busy. I've been good. It's been a little crazy. I've been traveling a lot for work,
I
and
saw your Facebook posts.
yeah, I was in New Orleans. Yeah,
Oh,
I was in Chicago, then I was in Columbus, Ohio, then I was in New Orleans, and actually before that, Nashville. So I've been all over the place. I,
I
I
love
will
it.
say that of all the places I've traveled, David, the best food of anywhere I've ever been in these United States is in New Orleans.
I was going to ask you about the food in New Orleans.
So good. I
What was
mean,
your favorite? Was it like gumbo? What'd you get?
well, yeah, gumbo's good, and every type of shrimp imaginable. There's some places that
Hmm.
have a pretty good shrimp po' boy sandwich.
Mm.
I'm not a huge shrimp guy, to be honest, but they have a barbecued shrimp down there that's delicious. But any of the seafood is going to be good.
Yeah.
But they're also everything there is good, and I think it's a lot of the seasoning, a lot of the chefs, a lot
Yeah.
of Cajun seasoning, a lot of the chicken is really good. I mean, it's
Mm.
that Louisiana cooking. But there's also, beignets, the pastries they have there covered with powdered sugar are delicious.
Mm.
And my favorite thing there is they have the best restaurant for breakfast I'm a breakfast
Mm.
guy.
I am too. So
And
so it's fair to say you stayed on the diet.
oh, David, my side from the laughter. I can't take a blow to the ticker like that in my condition. That's great. That's a good one. Yeah, I went right from going to the state fair, the Minnesota State Fair,
Oh my God.
to Nashville, to Chicago, to New Orleans. So the diet said goodbye. The beginning of August, the diet went
Okay.
bye-bye.
So you
Yeah.
have an appointment scheduled with a cardiologist, I take it?
I could feel my arteries harden as I ate those beignets. But I wanted to say the Ruby Slipper in the French Quarter. Now
Mm.
they've opened a few of them, but the original, the Ruby Slipper in the French Quarter in New Orleans, that's the best breakfast place. And they have
Mm.
the best eggs Benedict. The rest of the country hasn't figured this dish out, but they
Mm.
have something called eggs Cachon, and they have homemade biscuits. Then
Mm.
they put on pulled pork, then a poached egg, and then their own sauce. And it
Wow.
is unbelievable. I
Wow.
mean, I get it every time I go to New Orleans for work once a year, and I get it every time. I've
Mm.
tried actually a couple of other places. There's a couple other spots that were recommended for breakfast. Nothing has lived up to that. So now I just go back to the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, once you find a good one, stick
Yeah.
with it.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
hey, let's jump into our topic because you've got a big one today.
Yeah.
Roth conversions, especially here in 2025. This is the time of year where you're thinking, can I do a Roth conversion? What's my tax situation going to look like? And you say, David, don't leave tax brackets on the table.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as we get into retirement, right? You know what your income is going to be. Most of my clients, I would say 90% need anywhere from 10,000 a month to 12,000 a month net of taxes. So if we know, and let's just keep the math simple, if you know you need 100,000 a year net of taxes to pay your bills, go on vacation, do all those things you want to do, eat your beignets in New Orleans, and not worry about your income, right? You need a certain amount. So let's just say you're taking 120,000 of taxable income so that you can net 10,000 a month. Well, you're leaving unused tax brackets on the table, right? So your tax bracket, and I have my handy dandy tax bracket guide right here,
Sure.
but if you're taking out $120,000 and you're married, well, in order to get to the next tax bracket, you have to use up $206,700 of taxable income. So if you're only taking 120, you're leaving over 80, $90,000 of unused bracket. Does that make sense?
Ah, I see. Yeah, so
Yeah,
you could have more income and not go into a higher tax bracket.
correct. So if you're
Yeah.
not using the bracket, my position is start converting some of those IRAs into Roth. Now, I have some clients that use up the whole bracket, right? They're going to put 60,000 or 70,000 or 80,000 every year. They're going to convert that into their Roth. Other clients only want to do 20,000 or 30, but whatever you do, you need to start thinking about doing it now because we're getting it out of the IRA. It's now going to start growing and compounding. And if we use a 6% average return in 5, 10, 15 years, that Roth is going to grow to a sizable amount. And you've done two things. You've grown that Roth, that tax-free income, that tax-free money to a pretty sizable amount. And we've reduced the taxable amount because what are we going to have at 73, Tony?
Required distributions out of our traditional accounts like
Right.
401ks, IRAs, you have to take that money
Have
out,
to take them. And I call them required maximum contributions,
right? Because
right?
when you
Why are you taking the minimum contribution? Right?
right,
Take the most, use up that tax bracket, get that money out of that IRA because every year that
and then it can keep growing. And why I would ask why a Roth, I think I know the answer. Convert it from the traditional to the Roth. You'll have to pay the taxes now, but
correct
tax brackets are lower and right now historically low,
historically.
and that money then can continue to grow inside the Roth,
Exactly.
just like it was growing inside the traditional. But all the growth and the principal is now tax free, right?
Yeah. All
So
tax
you don't
free.
have to pay any tax on the growth or the principal,
No
if it's in
tax.
a Roth.
And there's no required minimum distribution. So you're not forced to take money out of the Roth. You can just leave it there if you don't need it and then pass it on to the children or grandchildren when you pass away. And again, if we look at apples to apples, you're going to leave $1 million to the grandkids or the kids in a Roth and $1 million in an IRA. Well, the Roth is 100% tax free to the kids. There's no tax. But that IRA, they're going to get taxed. And now we have the 10-year rule, right? So they have to take it out over 10 years at what I argue is going to be their highest earnings years,
At the full tax rate, which might bump them into a higher bracket.
which likely will. And in fact,
Yeah.
if you believe like I do, I don't think these tax brackets are going to remain indefinitely. I mean, we have them for
Mhm.
the next 4 years, but who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I always tell people, look, the IRS tax code's written in pencil.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's written in pencil, Tony?
Because they change it all the
It's
time.
it's going to get changed. And mathematically, if we look at the debt that this country is in, they're going to have to raise brackets. They're going to have to raise taxes in our lifetimes. And so again, I tell people this in my workshops. For the fundamentals of good tax planning is to always pay taxes at the lowest possible rate.
Right. Well, and that's good. Now, why do you think it is though that some people say, "Oh, I don't want to convert from my traditional," because a lot of people out there have traditional IRAs,
Yeah.
or they had a 401k and it was traditional, so they transferred it into an IRA, and that's good. But if it goes into a traditional IRA, again, all that money grows is fully taxable.
Yeah.
So why, if you're over 59 and a half, so you don't have to pay a penalty, why would you not convert that money into a Roth? In some cases, people say, well, my CPA told me definitely don't do that
Yeah.
because, and my
In most cases,
CPA is looking out for my best interest because he's trying to minimize my tax burden. What would you say to that?
well, I would say that CPAs are historians. They're not looking into the future, they look into the past.
So
So
they're
they,
just looking at this year's taxes or the
yeah,
last year's taxes, right?
they're looking at your last year's income
Yep.
and they're saying, okay, um, if you do a Roth conversion, you're going to pay this much in tax, and it doesn't make any sense to pay more in tax, which I would agree if we didn't have required minimum distributions,
Right.
if we didn't have the 10-year rule. What they don't look at and what we do for our clients, excuse me, let's go out now. You're 77 years old, right? And now you're forced to take RMDs. Well, if you had $1 million when you were 73 and it grew at 6%, and you were taking required minimum distributions, by the time you're 77, in just 5 years, your required minimum distribution went from $45,000 to almost $60,000. So now they're
Yikes.
forcing you to take this money out at what I would argue, and I think most people would agree, that if we go out to when we're 77 years old, tax brackets are likely going to be much higher. So now let's go out till we're 82 years old. Now that same $1 million IRA at 6% average return, even though we've been taking required minimum distributions out, is worth about 1.3 million. Now our required minimum distribution at 82 is $77,000.
Wow.
Fully taxable, in addition to any other income you have coming in, plus your Social Security. It creates a huge tax burden that people don't really fully understand. And it's one of the things that we help educate people on. And I educate CPAs all the time on this, because until you run through the numbers and you get them to start thinking out into the future, they're very narrow-minded, which is a
Right.
shame because
Right. And you're not a CPA yourself,
no,
but or a tax professional, but you've done long-term tax planning for your clients as it relates to retirement income planning, as it relates to their investments and things like that. So you are specialized in this retirement field, which is what most people's investments are in. And so that's a whole different ballgame that I think a lot of CPAs aren't really that involved with, right? They can quote tax law, but are they looking at the big picture? And you don't want to fall into that RMD trap, right?
oh, exactly, because it's coming. I call it the tax time bomb.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and
It's a
not
ticking tax time bomb, and
it,
it's the RMD trap, they call it, because eventually Uncle Sam wants his money. They're not going to let
yeah.
let it keep growing tax free indefinitely in a traditional IRA. So you've got to do something about that and plan for that ahead of time, because some people it's a kind of a tough wake up call when
Yeah.
they have to take that money out and pay full taxes on it. And if you look at what they're going to pay over their lifetime, it would have been better earlier on to possibly roll it over into a Roth IRA like you're talking about. Now, that's
Yeah.
not necessarily for everybody. It depends on your situation, right?
Absolutely. Everyone's different, but for most people, I always say in my workshops of IRA, the 401k, they're the worst assets you own. They're the
Right.
worst asset you own, because when you put money into those, the government is saying, we're going to give you a little tax break when you put the money in. And essentially what you're doing is you're going into business with the IRS,
Well,
because
it's a
they
joint account. It's like a
they
joint
own
account with
they
Uncle
own
Sam.
part of that account.
Yeah, a
Exactly.
lot of people think, well, I'm just throwing out a number. Let's say you have $400,000 in your 401k, or let's say you have $100,000 in your 401k, right?
Yeah.
You think, okay, I've got $100,000 I can use in retirement in that 401k, or that, when I turn 59 and a half, here's what I'm doing with that money. I've got 100,000 in there. No, you don't. You really, probably only have about 75 $100,000 in there because the rest belongs to the government, Uncle Sam. I
Yeah.
mean, it's going to be taxed at full taxation. If you wanted to take that money out, you would owe 25, 30% to the government.
Yeah.
And so that's a joint account. And the hard thing about that account is he can change the percentage that's his at any time. That's the government. They write the
Exactly.
rules. And
Exactly.
they
They make
have
the
done that.
rules. They have
Yeah.
done it, and they will continue to do that.
Right.
And so I tell people, look, a Roth conversion is you're just simply buying out the worst business partner you've ever had.
Right.
And then, let's look at the numbers, right? If we convert, let's say you start doing it when you're 65. Let's say you retire at 65
Yep.
and we start doing Roth conversions. And let's say we convert 50,000 a year and we do it over 15 years. Now, I tell people if you're going to do a Roth conversion, pay for the tax with already taxed dollars. Don't do the Roth conversion and pay the tax with your IRA because
Right.
that's
That
not as
doesn't work.
efficient. But let's just say
No.
we do that. Let's say we take 50,000 out, we take enough out to pay the tax, so we're only going to net $39,000 into the Roth, which we don't recommend, but let's just say we did that. And let's say it grows at 6%. So after 5 years of doing this, that Roth is going to grow to about $220,000. After 10 years, it's going to be worth over $500,000. And after just 15 years of doing 50,000 a year of Roth conversions, you're going to have almost $1 million in that Roth account tax free.
Wow.
No
Wow.
RMDs, no required minimum distribution. If you want to pull out 100 grand, tax free to you. You want to, if you pass away, leave it to the children, 100% tax free to them. And that's the power of, steadily filling that tax bracket, using up those tax brackets, because that compounding growth turns 39,000 a year conversion into nearly $1 million in 15 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. But if you left that same 50,000 in the IRA
Yeah.
at 6% growth, what happens?
Yeah. It turns into about $160,000 at the end of 5 years, but it's taxable. Your RMDs chip away at it. And when you pass it on to your kids, they've got that 10-year rule. They're forced to withdraw it at what I again argue is their peak earning years, and they could lose 25, 27, 30, 40% in taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So would you rather leave 125,000 of the kids tax free or 160,000 that's taxable? I think most people would say 125 tax free.
Yeah, because the 160 would shrink to about 110 pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're saying is stop leaving tax brackets on the table. That's what you're talking about right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what about the power of compounding? You mentioned, you alluded to it there, the power of compounding interest and legacy planning. You talk about leaving it to your kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you converted $100,000 at age 65, pay the tax, let it grow. By the time you're 85,000, you've tripled your investment.
But by the time you're 85 years old, you mean?
Yeah, it's
You've
tripled.
tripled your money.
And it's all tax free. And you don't have RMDs. It's your money. The government's no longer in your pocket.
And your heirs, it'll pass on to your heirs tax free.
Yeah. And they don't have to pay that tax now the 10-year rule still applies to Roths.
Sure.
So they've got to get it out of the Roth over to their own investment over 10 years, but there's no tax when it comes out of the Roth.
So it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So if there's $1 million in it and they want to move the $1 million out, there's no tax, 100% to them, tax free. And they've got
or they
10
can,
years
but
to do it.
yeah, they can leave it in there 10 years, which might be smart because the longer they leave it in there, it grows tax free.
The more it's going to grow. And that's what we
Yeah.
tell people to leave it there if you don't need it.
Sure. If you don't
unfortunately, what happens is about 80% of the children that inherited money, it's gone within 5 years because, they buy the boat that they always wanted or the car that they always wanted or whatever. They didn't
You don't
earn it.
need a boat. Somebody we both know once told me, Tony, you don't need to own a boat. You need a friend with a boat.
Right.
You just need a friend with a boat. You never need to own your own boat. You just need a friend who owns a boat.
Right. Unless you inherit a bunch of money and then for some reason you need to own a boat. I don't know why.
Right. That's the problem. All right. And there's a time element here though, too. Why does 2025 matter?
Well, I mean, we're looking at rate cuts. The market's been up. And so, if you got $1 million in your IRA and the market's up 20%, well, now you got 1.2 million to convert, right? So
Yeah.
the sooner is better when the markets are doing well. I like to get things converted. And I had a client that converted over the last 2 years. They converted large amounts of their IRA into Roths, and they're very glad they did now
Yeah.
because we've had some real growth in those Roths, where otherwise it would have been in their taxable account.
That's a good reason right there. Another reason was that the tax cuts were set to expire, but they've extended them and made them quote unquote permanent. But we all know with the deficit rising, permanent is in quotes because that could change at any time.
Yeah, and there's no way. I mean, mathematically, if you do the numbers, there's no possible way
Yeah.
that they don't raise taxes in the future. It's not sustainable what we're doing right now.
No, it isn't. So to wrap up what you've talked about today, tie it together for us and let us know how we can get a plan in place that will accomplish this.
Well, I think number one, which we have to realize, is that CPAs are historians. They're thinking 1 year at a time. Advisors like us, we have to think in decades.
Yeah.
And what is it going to look like in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? RMDs are a tax trap. Those IRAs, those 401ks, they're the worst assets you own. And there's a tax time bomb coming.
Yeah.
If you've got unused tax brackets, use them up. Convert those IRAs, 401ks into Roths. If you're contributing to your 401k still, consider moving some or all of that contribution into the Roth portion of it. Almost all 401ks, 403bs have Roth options now. There are very few that don't allow that now. Most people don't even know that. So if you have a 401k, you're still contributing, talk to your HR department, go online. If you can do the Roth, I put 100% of my contributions into the Roth for the 401k. And these next few years may be your last chance before tax brackets start to rise again. I think we have another 3, maybe 4-year window, and I think time is running out. So, like I said earlier, who doesn't love a sale, Tony? I love a sale. Taxes are on sale.
Yep.
So don't
Take
just
advantage.
ask. Yeah, take advantage. Don't ask yourself, how much do I need to live this year? You need to ask, how much of my bracket am I wasting by not planning ahead?
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell our listeners to really start thinking about as we get into the end of the year. And, what can we do to use up those brackets?
There you go. Well, you know what, David? A great message for our listeners today. So if our listeners out there, our viewers, want to set up a no charge, no obligation consultation with you and get a plan in place or ask questions about this or where they're at with their finances, investments, retirement accounts, how can they do that?
Sure. You can always call my office, 619-460-9433.
Yep.
Or go to our website, srswealthmanagement.com, and you can request an appointment. And either way, we're happy to get you on the calendar, completely complimentary. Bring us your tax returns, bring us all of your statements. We'll run a multitude of reports, our Morningstar report, color money risk assessment, our Roth conversion report, our found money report, excuse me, our income compass. There are so many reports that we can run based on your situation, what you're trying to do, whether it's pay less in tax, avoid the tax time bomb, leave more to your children, have more income for yourself. I always say, my dad's retirement plan was to to bounce his last check, right? So whatever your plan, we want to help you achieve it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David. I think that's a great offer for our listeners out there. Give that phone number and web address one more time.
Yes, thank you, Tony. 619-460-9433 or srswealthmanagement.com.
All right. And that does it for today's episode of the Retirement Roadmap with our host, David Nagy.